Good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome to the WLBB Community Voice Program on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. I'm your host this morning, Colin Worthington. We are also streaming live on Facebook this morning, so good morning to you joining us via that app. Our guest this morning, I will introduce you here to him in just a second, but today, very sad day for Steve Craddock. The last day he'll have the opportunity to give away $100. Let me give a big shout out to the people who have won previously, the previous 11 days. It's our random trivia Christmas giveaway. And I already have 11 winners: Jeff, Heather, Angela, Teresa, Chris, Buddy, Brittany, Melissa, Lynn, Donna, Leslie, and, of course, whoever wins today, $100. I'm going to give you the rules on our trivia game. I'm going to ask you that trivia question. When you do know the answer, visit our website, newstalk1330.com. The random Christmas trivia banner, you'll see it there on the website. You can enter your name, your email, your phone, and, of course, the answer. Now, one entry from the correct answers we picked at random today, the last day, and you'll win $100 cash. Then on December the 16th, that is tomorrow, one of the 12 daily winners, along with a 13th winner selected at random that morning, we'll have a chance to turn that $100 into $1,000 at a live remote broadcast at Mike Bell Chevrolet. Oh, you know what? I don't even have the question. No, I'm just kidding. You were worried for a second, weren't you? All right, this is the final question, guys, so listen closely. The modern Santa Claus is mainly a mix of which two figures? That question again, the modern Santa Claus, the happy, jolly guy in the red suit, he's mainly a mix of which two figures? Now, if you got that answer, you can Google it and check that out, and then go to our website and put that answer and all the relevant information, and wish you good luck. And don't forget about tomorrow, that live remote. Didn't do it as good as Steve Craddock did it this week. He was high-octane morning show guy and did a good job for us. Anyway, back to our program. Our guest this morning is Missy Dugan's husband. He also is District 30 State Senator Mike Dugan. We appreciate that he's come out to talk with us, give us a preview on the upcoming legislative session, which is just about 3 weeks away, right? And you ready to go?
Ready to go.
This is election year, too. What do we see out of legislators during an election year, you think?
What do you talk this coming session?
Yeah,
when you
this coming session. I mean, do we see them trying to make more of an impact? Is it kind of just rushed through because, going through election again?
You got different people. You got 180 in the House and 56 in the Senate, so you're going to have a mix of a whole bunch of different motivations in there. Fortunately, most of them, a vast majority of them, are going to be there to get the work done that we need to get done. And there'll be some that stand up and pontificate to get their image out there. There'll be some that are focused on running for something else. But most of us are going to be sitting there trying to do all the work that we've either introduced last year or have worked on over the summer and into the fall, getting ready to introduce this year.
We look at these sessions as 2 years, the terms, and I guess the legislation that was introduced in 2017 will come back in 2018. What the roles that you play, like your positions on committees and things like that, do they carry over from 17 to 18, or is there do you fill different roles each year?
Standard is it's a 2-year assignment, so you would move from you would stay, like I'm the chair of economic development and tourism. Unless something weird happens, you stay for 2 years as the chair of that committee, or of all committees. This year there's going to be some mix-up because we have rules that within our caucus that if you're running for higher office, you can't hold a leadership position. So obviously the pro tem in the Senate is one of the guys that's running for lieutenant governor. So he had to step down from pro tem. So
is that Jeffries?
No. Jeffries was chair of regulated industries.
Okay.
So since he's resigned, that one is open. So you'll have some openings in committees now because of people having to move out of positions that we'll have to fill.
And I guess in that same thing, there was discussion, a possibility of seeing you as the majority whip this coming year.
I was the nominee, and it
was just one nominee, right?
Yeah, it was just one nominee, and we had our elections yesterday, and the majority leader put the state in front of himself and decided he was not going to put himself out for pro tem, the position I told you that just opened. He says, I'm going to stay as the majority leader. So with him staying as the majority leader, the majority whip position was not open because it's a 2-year assignment. So, I'm glad that we're maintaining some stability in leadership because it's going to be the second year of a 2-year term. Those are usually a little tumultuous. But I'm also appreciative that my peers thought enough of me that I was the only nominee to fill that gap.
It's an enviable position. Now, did Dusty Hightower hold that a few years back?
Dusty was a deputy whip.
A deputy whip, okay. And as the whip, you're calling the shots as what we'll see presented, right? I mean, they need to come to you with their ideas and say, I'd like to get this going, and maybe you pick the order.
The whip at the state level is a little different than what you see at the federal level. At the federal level, you see the things where all the arm twisting's going on, and these are the ones you're going to put up, and these are the ones you're not. At the state level, it's more of you have a piece of legislation out there. Mm-hmm. I'm keeping you informed of, buddy, you've got the votes. You don't have the votes. Do you still want to go forward with this? Because if it goes down.
But you have to go make sure the votes are out there. You have to talk to everybody and say, hey, are you supporting this?
That's on the back side of it. On the front side of it, with everybody in your caucus, you need to make sure that they have the most complete, accurate information of what a bill does and what it won't do. So there's a lot of research that goes in that you set yourself up for success as an entity by providing all the information you can, clarity. So, like I said, it's not arm twisting like you see on the federal level.
District 30 State Senator Mike Dugan, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. Let me just give you a generic question, and then we'll maybe talk about some legislation that may return in the next year. We kind of talked about, I just asked what you thought legislators would do next year, being in an election season. But, I guess something you and I have talked about, I've seen you speak about it a couple times over the past year, is improving the rural area. We've got Haralson County, which we kind of focus on. I mean, we're Carroll County still rural. So, but I think the question about broadband internet, what role can legislation play in improving that?
Well, as you know, we've had the different rural focused studies going on over the summer. Rural broadband being one, rural healthcare being one. Working with either providers that are already existing and to expanding out into the rural communities is one way.
Why does it take legislation, though? I mean, why don't? I mean, is it forcing them to do it?
At some regard, it's highly encouraging.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's two ways you can do it. You can either, if you don't do this, we'll do this, or we will provide you this incentive if you come into an area where you, as a privately owned company, are going to lose money. So, I mean, there's two different ways you can do it. We would prefer they just do it on their own, but that's going to take agreements with, if some of the transmitters that are required need to go on telephone poles rather than building new towers in more remote areas, then you've got to have cooperation between the service providers. The people that own the poles are different than Georgia Power or Carroll EMC or any of those. That's a whole nother entity. So you got to just work out a bunch of agreements with them.
And we'll keep an eye on that during the next session. Time right now is 8:37. We'll go take our first break here, discussing the upcoming legislative session with District 30 State Senator Mike Dugan. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to post them to our Facebook Live page, and we'll try and pass those on to Mike during this program. And when we come back, I think over the last 2 years, legislators have approved raises for teachers, and they've approved raises for
law enforcement
as well. They'll be discussing raises for themselves in the next year. And we'll talk about that after this break. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
It is now 8:39. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program. Our show streaming live on Facebook this morning, the News Talk 1330 Facebook page. Of course, you can hear us on News Talk 1330 AM and FM 106.3. I'm your host on this Friday, Colin Worthington. Our guest is State Senator Mike Dugan, District 30. What are the regions? What's the territory for District 30?
Basically, Carroll, Douglas, and Paulding.
Okay, but it's the entire Douglas?
No, it's western half. If you take Dog River and come west, that's the district. And then in Paulding, it's State Road 120 south is the district. And then Carroll, it's everything but Fairfield, Hewlett, Whitesburg, and Lowell. Okay,
and that's just a small little piece. And then for those people not represented by Dugan, Matt Brass District 31, right? Mm-hmm. Let me read this article. I believe it was on the AJC about a week ago. State lawmakers could see a 72% increase to their salaries under the recommendations of a committee created by the Georgia legislature earlier this year to review compensation for elected officials. Now, the committee also recommended increasing by 19% the varying salaries of constitutional officers who are elected statewide. The new salary for Georgia legislators would be $29,908 per the recommendation. That's basically $173 a day, set by the Legislative Services Committee. If this thing does come to a vote, I mean, what will you consider whether to approve this for yourself or not? I mean, it's hard to put somebody in that position and say, vote for yourself, to get a pay raise. So.
Yeah, I don't support that. We knew what it was when we moved in there. We're the 8th most populated state, and I think we're the 6th lowest paid assembly. But if you're in it to try to make money, you're in the wrong field. That's it's not why most people are there. And it'd be hard pressed to come back here and say, yeah, I voted for myself a pay raise. So.
Especially, this year. Could that be somebody something somebody could use in a campaign against the senator?
Well, they could if they voted for it. But it's funny how you see different states do it. Like Alabama, I think their legislatures pay like $48,000 a year, and they're part-time as well. But how they do it is they are the median income of the state of Alabama, so they never have to vote on a raise because as the rate income level changes, their salary adjusts with it. But we get paid $17,000 a year. We're good with that.
Well, it probably covers gas for you though. Going to Atlanta every day. That's about what it equals out. Again, it is a part-time job, 40 days. It just goes about 3 months, 2 months, right? Is it 40 days?
It's 40 days.
Okay.
That's all we do. We're just there for 40 days.
Yeah. I didn't say just.
I'm just messing.
But it ends up being 2.5 months or something like that in the long run. There's days off in there. And you and I have talked about this before. Why is that better for Georgia? Do you think that 40 days and not be full-time? You look at California and they're full-time. They're paying them $120,000 each legislator. So that is a full-time job. But here, why is that better for Georgia to do 40 days and so early in the year and not spread it out?
It depends on how you feel your government ought to be run. If you want a professional legislature, then California is the way to do it. If you want a citizen legislature like what we have in Georgia, then our method is better. We have a lot of people that cover a wide array of careers that serve in the legislature. So you have a little bit of expertise from a whole host of different areas, and when you come together, it makes everything stronger. Now, you'll see in the paper every once in a while somebody voted on something that will impact on their careers, their occupation. There's thousands of bills that go through. It's kind of hard not to see something at some point where it would not have some kind of impact on your career, and as long as it's not helping you specifically, then I'm not sure that you can get away from it. If it does affect you specifically, then you should recuse yourself. But the only reason I'm bringing that up, I saw that in the AJC last week where they were they were talking about the citizen legislature, and they were saying that the potential is there to be misused, and it could, but it's not likely. It's still a better system than having people that sit there all day, all year round, that get detached from their community to serve as a professional legislature. I just don't think that's the way to go.
How much do you pay attention to the pre-filing of legislation before you actually go to?
Not much. Honestly, the pre-filing, what that does is it's somebody getting a headline is what it's for. Because even if you pre-file something, day one, the thing that you pre-filed has to be refiled. So it's all it's doing is getting the story out there.
So that legislation page is legis.gov. Yeah, I mean that actually lists those. So if you're interested at home, it's legis.gov, and you can find out some pre-filings. And again, they'd have to be refiled anyway. Does it ever turn out that they don't file them again?
Oh yeah.
And again, that's kind of just for headlines, because a lot of those, like the one, there's several of them that are probably attention getting. I mean, there's legislation for legalizing marijuana, being over 21 and things like that, and that may be discussed in the next 10 years. I doubt it'll come up this year.
Yeah, you keep hearing about that. It's federal law is what has to change on that. State can't legalize this. It's a Schedule I drug. So you say, well, Colorado did. Colorado didn't legalize it. They just chose not to enforce the laws. So you can do the semantics all you want, but until it's changed at the federal level, states have no authority to overturn a federal law.
There was discussion last year on opening two, I guess, gambling resorts. There was a special
destination resorts.
Yeah, for gambling, they'd house gambling facilities there. And we heard a lot about it for a little bit, and it kind of died down. Do you see that coming back next year?
I don't. The closest thing that I would see coming up would be fantasy sports. Right now, they're happening across the state of Georgia, and they are not regulated at all. So that would be something that I could see.
And then regulated, they probably have to get permits and things like that.
Yeah.
And the state would get money for those things.
But right now, they're just operating.
What bills are you attached to right now as far as being a sponsor that are kind of out there that might come back up next year?
Senate Bill 2 is still out there, the FAST Act. That's the legislation I authored last year to help kind of scrape away all those years and years of rules, regulations, requirements that have kind of put an undue burden on somebody who wants to expand their job or create a new company or just trying to get a permit to do business in the state of Georgia. We did a lot of modifications on it. There is one entity out there that's still kind of opposed to it, but I think during the off year we've gotten through the misinformation or disinformation campaign that they put out. So I anticipate that's going to come up pretty early in this next session, and all indicators I've gotten is it's going to pass.
I looked into Facebook Live, a comment from a young lady here in Carrollton, who I'm pretty sure you know, but she says she's not pushing for the pay raise. However, we do need to remember those are not 8-hour 40 days. They are more like 12 or more hour days, and our legislators work year-round, listening and responding to constituents. That's from Ronnie Tewksbury, former librarian.
Well, Ronnie knows.
Yeah, no comment on that as far as...
No, I mean, anybody that says you just work 40 days obviously doesn't know everything that goes on with it, because the legislative period is 40 days. That takes a while, but you're responsible for constituents year-round. And you can't say, I'm sorry, person X, that my constituent, I can't help you because I'm outside the 40-day period. That's not the way it works. You're responsible for your people 365 days.
And I've told you before, I mean, you are at every single event that is part of our community. I mean, I can't recall missing one or seeing one that you weren't there. So you're going to these every day because there is something to attend pretty much every day.
Yeah, it's important that you get out and see what's important to the people within the community.
This is from Leslie Smith McPherson. She's up in Vicarilla, and she says the state legislature has been looking to update our adoption laws, which needs doing. We should do everything we can not to leave children languishing in foster care when we can get them into loving adoptive homes. However, there's a push by some state leadership, legislators, and big Georgia companies to not allow religious groups to participate in placing these children through the state program without making them give up their strongly held religious beliefs. Where do you see this going this year?
I see that's one of the adoption bill is one of our priorities coming back into the beginning of this next session. Obviously, you know that it kind of got held up on the last day of the last session. And the way that I see us moving forward on it is it's actually going to be two bills because part of the holdup last year was the two different code sections that were billed, that were in that bill, and the one that Leslie's talking about right there, fall in different areas, so that they could be considered non-germane. So I think both bills are going to come forward. They're going to come forward as separate pieces, and I think both will pass.
All right, thanks for that question, Leslie. 10 minutes before 9 o'clock on this Friday morning program, Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System here on News Talk 1330, FM 106.3, and streaming live on News Talk 1330 Facebook this morning. We'll finish up our discussion with District 30 State Senator Mike Dugan after this break from Tanner.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
And welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program. Our show brought to you by Tanner Health System just about 8 minutes before 9 o'clock, which means we have 8 more minutes with State Senator Mike Dugan, who is our guest this morning. Appreciate your comments on Facebook Live this morning. Let me read this story to you, Mike. Georgians won't have to travel to Atlanta to drop in on Senate committee meetings this coming legislative session. And that's, selfishly, I like that because then I can sit there and see what Mike Dugan says and record all his comments and share them. But they'll be streaming live now. All the committee meetings.
Yeah, for a long time now, everything that was going on in the chamber, you could obviously watch live, but they didn't apply to the Senate side, the committee rooms. There were some in the House side in their committee rooms, but not in the Senate. And over the down period, we have wired the committee rooms, multiple cameras in there, so you can, depends on who's talking, the camera switches around. So if you want to sit at home and see what's going on with one of our committees, then it'll be available.
Do you think those committee meetings will be toned down next year compared to previous meetings because people will see them?
No. I think probably, if anything, the opposite would happen. And it won't be from the committee members themselves, but sometimes, surprisingly enough, we have some emotional issues that we discuss in committees. And I can see where there would potential for people in the audience to have the opportunity to make a visual stand.
Personally to their legislator, they won't be able to comment. It won't be like a social media thing, is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
If you have not seen a committee meeting up there, it's almost like a church. It's with a bunch of pews in it, and so anybody, anytime, can come in and sit and
well, I mean, if they're watching it at home, they're not going to be able to.
Oh no!
Okay.
What I'm saying is, people in there's potential for people in the audience to be disruptive if they choose to be.
Federally, the opioid epidemic's become a pretty big deal. It's pretty scary. I grew up in West Virginia, so I keep an eye on things. So going back there, and there's a little nook of West Virginia where it connects with Kentucky, which is probably one of the worst spots in all of U.S. It's a problem here in Georgia too. What will we see as far as legislative discussions on that?
Yeah, it's been going on. Two different ones. There's been a House one and a Senate one. Senator Renee Unterman has led the effort in the Senate side. And she was actually here in town yesterday to talk some of the opioid work that she's been doing. It's I wish there was just a quick, simple answer that you could do on that one, but it took us a whole bunch of actions together to get us into the mess we're in, and it's going to take a whole bunch of stuff to get us out of it. Some of these pain management clinics, we're going to have to reevaluate how those are done. Going to have to reevaluate the prescription, the legitimate prescribing of some opiate-based drugs, because some of those are the ones that are now getting out in the market. And you got to make sure that you can't go from pharmacy A to pharmacy B to pharmacy C and they not be able to see, hey, this guy's been getting a whole lot of opiate-based drugs.
So maybe kind of like we have with the Benadryl purchases or things like that. You'll have to have a catalog and documentation if people are.
Yeah,
that's
and
consideration.
And that goes back to one of the questions you asked earlier. That at the federal level, I kind of wish they would reevaluate the schedule of drugs, because there's potential there to some that they find of no medicinal value may be useful in helping offset some of the opiate crisis we're having.
Another story, this one out of Milledgeville. A legislative panel focused on the challenges facing rural Georgia has proposed a state of changes meant to spark job growth and reverse population declines in the state's beleaguered counties. And I guess we kind of touched on that a little bit in the first segment, but that'll definitely take up a lot of the legislation.
Yeah, we started last year. You hear the two Georgia issues, and we started last year to try to figure out how do you kind of promote the growth in the more rural areas of the state, and for a whole host of reasons. Whether, we all keep talking about the transportation issue around the major metropolitan areas. Well, if you have people living in other parts of the state, that helps take care of the transportation issues as well. It's just an additional step there. But we can't afford to let parts of our state just dry up, and so we've been putting a full court press on how do you make them appealing so they can flourish again.
Georgia legislators could consider allowing local governments to decide whether to remove Confederate memorials from public spaces. That's obviously been a national topic over the last year or so. I'm going to say, a Democrat out of Decatur had pre-filed that legislation, but again, pre-filed. How far do you see that becoming much of a discussion?
I don't. I'm not. Obviously, there's some passion attached to that from both sides. But again, we're not going to sit there and spend time worrying about stuff from the past when we got too much stuff that we can concentrate on going forward. And that's going to take all of our time, is the future of what we got going on in Georgia.
Just about 3 more minutes left in our program as we wrap up our discussion with State Senator Mike Dugan, District 30. I guess a news story that I've kind of been watching over the last 6 months nationally, there's talked about a thing called a textilizer. Would be a device that police can use. They'll be able to tell if you're texting on your phone. As you've said before, obviously texting is against the law, but this would allow them to see, I guess, the website that would show up and say the URL or whatever if they're on a website, if they're texting. And there's some other states that are considering allowing officers to use it, but it would have to be legislated here in the state for that to happen. How much have you heard about that, and do you see being open to something like that?
I'm curious to how they want to look at it, because we have 1,500, close to 1,500 deaths, traffic fatalities so far in Georgia this year. Georgia's got 10.5 million people. I was coming through Virginia 3-4 weeks ago, and they're smaller. There's 8+ million people in Virginia. They had 400 fatalities. They have the same type signs we do in Georgia. They have 400 fatalities. So anytime we're losing 1,500 to 2,000 people a year on Georgia roads, we got some issues. And the number one cause right now that you're seeing is distracted driving. It's people looking down. They got to answer that text while they're driving down the road.
You got to see that sports score.
Yeah, that's and it's literally killing Georgians. So there's a fine balance there. Is that unlawful search and seizure? You got to look at the
debate. Yeah.
You got to look at the constitutionality of it. But if it's but again, driving is not a right. And that's what it goes back to. So that's the argument that you're going to have both sides. Driving is a privilege that you agree to the terms and the conditions of that state that you'll abide by. And it's kind of like if you drink, can you take a breathalyzer? And you can say no, and then there's other
attorneys tell you not to.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks for coming out this morning.
No, thank you. And for anybody who's never had the opportunity to come and be interviewed here, bring a coat because it's like 30 degrees in the studio.
Steve's pretty proud that he fixed the heater yesterday. We actually got it up to 66 degrees just for you. So
I'm not sure we're there yet.
Yeah, okay.
I think you just changed the thermostat.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in on Facebook this morning. Thanks for listening on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System just about 9 o'clock. Have a good weekend.